You're watching Studio Brush Pen, the drawing channel with one leg longer than the other. Let me show you the pens I use for drawing. I've listed them in order of how long I've used each type. Let's take a look. The Artline 210 was the first pen I really saw as a cartooning pen. It's thicker than a regular felt-tipped pen and offers a clean line for cartoons. It's also the kind of thing you can easily find in a department store or office supply store. I'm sure I got a fondness for these pens because my dad would bring them home from work when I was younger. The tip blunts a little with time, but they are simple and affordable. You might notice also that the line width is pretty consistent, so I'm using the very tip and then the side of the tip here to get a little variety. The Copic Sketch is not the first brush pen I ever used, but is definitely the one I've used the longest. This range of pens has a tip at each end, but I really only use the brush tip, which is broad and flexible enough to offer a great range of lines. I love that it's refillable, especially considering this is probably the most expensive pen I use on a regular basis. My only issue with the Copic is that the ink bleeds quite heavily, and I have to be more careful with how I use it. I usually put a spare piece of paper underneath to catch any bleed through. Because the tip is so broad, this time the drawing is a lot quicker, but it takes a bit more control to get the line width I want, and that speed does mean I compromise a little on detail. The Uniball Signo is a gel roller pen I've used for 20 years. It's my main sketching pen. I love it because it's cheap, it's consistent, it has a great flow, and it's refillable. I keep one in every room and in my sketchbook bag as well. The only downside is that if you aren't paying attention, that great flow can occasionally lead to clots forming on your paper. I tend to keep a scrap of paper beside me to keep the tip of the pen clean, or use the back page of a sketchbook if I'm outside. For such a cheap pen, it's amazing that they can be refilled quickly and easily. You can probably tell this is the type of pen I'm most comfortable sketching birds with. As you can see, I draw quickly and loosely and still manage to get in those details. The main issue is usually filling in large areas of black, but that's why it's okay to combine multiple pens in a single drawing. I've been using the Pigma or Micron felt tip pens for so long I can hardly remember when I first saw them. But if you're interested in cartooning or illustration, I'm sure you've probably seen a lot of artists use them. The range of sizes and the consistency of the tips is a big reason I keep using them. As far as I can tell, the Pigma branded ones with the dark blue body are sold in Japan, and the Micron branded ones with the beige body are mostly sold in other countries, but they are the same pens. I don't know if you can tell by looking at the video, but I'm actually using all of the different width pens in this drawing. I start with the 0.5 for the basic lines, go up to the 0.8 for the larger black areas, then down to the finer tips for the details. The Kuretake was the first brush pen recommended to me as a comics drawing pen. The tip is firm but flexible and fine enough to give some detail to my work. I have to be a bit careful because the ink doesn't dry quite as quickly as the other pens, and it can smudge a little if I'm not paying attention, but it's so much fun to draw with. You might notice I'm working almost exclusively left to right, top to bottom in the drawing. It's the best way to work for right-handed artists who don't want to smudge the ink. And for you left-handed artists, you've probably already worked out the opposite. The Pilot Shunpitsu Pocket Brush Pen is a recent favourite, as I saw it on a rack next to the Kuretake brush pens when I was shopping for art supplies in Japan. It's a comparable size and price, but has a slightly different flow. The tip isn't as firm as the Kuretake, but that isn't a plus or a minus, it just means I use it for different things. You can actually see that the line is a bit looser as I draw. Also, I love how black the ink is in this one. So those are all my main drawing pens. As you can see, I found some things that I liked and stuck with them. The secret is to get as much as you can out of every tool you use. And the longer you stick with something, the more comfortable you'll be with it as you work. So know your gear. You're watching Studio Brush Pen.